Hi and welcome to another installment of Cheesy Bites. Throughout the year I covered quite a few gadgets, mostly keyboards, but behind the curtain there have been items that just never made the cut. Not for a lack of being interesting though, I just couldn't find an angle or a story surrounding them, until now. And as it so happens to be, we are getting close to that particular season again, so in case you are still looking for a gift for that special someone or yourself, maybe you'll find something here. First off, we got the Divoom Pixoo 64, which is, as the name suggests, a 64x64 pixel display. I won't be covering the entire feature list of this thing, as it's quite an extensive one and includes some really weird entries like a built-in radio station or a whole social network called a Discord via the companion app. Instead, let's look at what most people, including myself, will probably use this for, which is the display of fun and interactive pixelated designs to enhance your surroundings. By default, you can pick something from the Clock Gallery app, which, as the name suggests, includes a lot of clocks or similar items. For example, there are several financial displays for all you Patagonia West-wearing moneymakers out there, and also weather displays to keep you informed about the conditions of the terrifying outside. Although I wouldn't trust these depending on your location, as I didn't find the accuracy to be particularly good. There's also sports and esports statistics, information on message board entries, Spotify playlists, and RSS feeds. You can even connect your Fitbit to this thing, although I don't have one of those, so I wasn't able to try this. You can also use it to monitor your PC, which does require an additional program to be installed on your machine, which will then display the usual CPU, GPU, and RAM usage, as well as the temperature. Something I was keen on trying out is the YouTube channel information. It's a cool display, but the accuracy is a bit off. This isn't Divoom's fault though, and is the result of how YouTube allows channel data to be pulled. The good thing is, all you need is the channel name. There's no authentication required, which I actually prefer, even if it doesn't display the most accurate numbers because of this. If these interactive displays aren't your cup of tea though, there is an entire community-driven marketplace full of amazing pixel artwork ready to be discovered. There's a lot in here, and browsing through this can take some time, with new entries being added constantly. This is a really good thing though, it shows that the community is very active. It can be a bit slow though, and I did encounter occasional crashes on my iPhone 14 while spending a little more time in here than I probably should. The search is also not as efficient, and I had difficulty finding anything good that matched my description. The filter functions are also a bit limited, so I ended up directly going to the Expert tab most of the time. I don't know exactly what the criteria are for these, but it seems to be a collection of the most popular creators on the platform. And for good reason, there are some pretty amazing pieces, and I ended up picking most of my favorites from here. This favorites list can later be used to more easily assign a design to some of the other features, which we'll get to in a second, or just have the Pixoo cycle through all of them using the Cloud Channel display in the Clock Gallery. If pre-made pixel art is not for you, you can try making your own using design or animation apps. Both will let you draw anything you want on the available canvas and then animate it. You can also modify anything found in the gallery or change it to however you like it. As I like both creativity and imagination though, I didn't do either of those things, and I just ignored the feature along with many of the other apps. As mentioned before, I'm not gonna go too deep into what this thing can do, but I feel like mentioning it is at least needed so you can get an idea of just how much there is. There is a pixel coloring game, which reminds me of those paint by numbers games from years past, an alarm and reminder function so you can set up the display of a design at a predefined time, which is rather neat. You can do the same thing for a specific day too, like an anniversary or New Year's Eve, although you can't select the date range, so having season's greetings throughout December is unfortunately not doable. You've got a couple of handy tools like a countdown timer, a stopwatch, or a scoreboard that is sadly also not customizable and only has 2 parties. Then we start to get into the really weird stuff like this chat app, which I never tried because it only works if you have the ID of another Divoom user. And lastly, noise meter as well as voice commands. At first I thought the Pixoo 64 could act as an alternative smart speaker. After all, it has a built-in microphone that can be used to trigger animations on certain designs, but the mic is actually not used for this because it requires an existing voice assistant to operate. For iOS it uses shortcuts from you know who that shall not be named for obvious reasons, which will then trigger the Divoom app and change whatever you configured it to do. This isn't as elegant of a solution as I would have hoped for, but at least these established voice assistances are pretty good at understanding me. But it begs the question of why you would want to launch a timer using Divoom if it goes through an assistant in the first place. However, it is a neat option to have. Overall, I quite like the Pixoo 64. It does a lot more than I thought it could, and even though I won't be using most of these features, there's plenty to go around and configure to your heart's content. At $130 at the time of this video, it is on the pricier side, but they do also offer a lot of alternatives. This one I quite like though, because it can easily be hung on the wall and blends itself nicely into the background. I feel like Charge, or formerly known as SHARGE, I think that's how you pronounce it, made a big splash in the portable power bank market this year with their unique design. I've, and probably you too, have had many power banks over the years. With all the gadgets we carry around these days, having one, especially during trips, has become a necessity. The last one in my carry-on was the OmniCharge 20 Plus, which cost me a lot of money, so I was a bit hesitant when I got the SHARGE 130, formerly known as Storm 2 Slim. The design is very eye-catching for sure, but there's more to it than meets the eye. For example, I found the form factor of the 130 to be perfect for my needs. I got the alpaca tech case and it perfectly seats itself at the bottom with plenty of room left for other gadgets. It features a 20,000 mAh capacity and can charge your device at up to 130 watts. Yeah, that's a lot of juice coming out of something this small. When you plug this into a MacBook Pro, it can unload its energy rather fast. I wish it had more ports though. The single USB-C and A plugs are great and can be used simultaneously, but I wish it had 2 USB-C ports instead, or maybe even 3 now. That would have been great. Another great feature of it is the built-in display. At first this might appear a bit gimmicky, and I must admit I too dismissed it, but I have come to actually rely on it to make sure devices are charging at their maximum speed. It's also become a really great tool to test what a device is capable of receiving. I know the last bit might be a YouTube production specific need, but it can be helpful to just double check that everything is in order. The same goes for when you are charging the 130. Seeing how much juice goes into it is a great way to test power supplies and how much they actually, well, supply. The bank will also pass through power once it's charged, and I actually had it set up like this on a few trips, going from the power socket through the bank and then to the devices. There is also a tiny menu which is a bit cumbersome to navigate, but luckily you don't have to do that too often or at all if you don't want to change any of the settings. You can check the individual battery voltages, the charge cycle, set temperature unit, how long it takes for the display to turn off, and its orientation, as well as powering it off manually. On the main screen there is also a timer which shows how long the battery has been charging in total. This could be an interesting statistic, for example. Maybe you want to know how long the bank was active during the trip, and can be reset in the menu if you want to go back to 0. You can also check the current voltages, ampere, which ports are active, and how much they concurrently draw, as well as the temperature of the bank itself. It's kind of funny how much enjoyment I got out of this. If the size of the 130 isn't enough though, there is a slightly larger version, the 100, formerly known as the Storm 2. As the name suggests, its maximum output is 100 watts instead of 130. It does have a larger capacity though, at 25.6 thousand mAh, at the cost of quite a bit more heft. You do get 2 USB-C ports though, a single USB-A and a barrel plug that can come in quite handy if you rely on devices that need something like that. There are more difference between them though. The 100 has a bit more information regarding the cells and the battery life or health, and displays the total capacity remaining. You can also set the output of the barrel plug, which is super cool if you have a sensitive device. This might get a little annoying though if you frequently have to change it, since navigating and adjusting these settings using the single button can be a bit tedious. Lastly, let's talk about the design of these things. Yes, the transparent housing is very polarizing and has been trending all 2023 and before that, but my biggest worry was, how does it hold up? Well, I've had this bank for about 5 months now, and I took it with me on day trips, hikes, and 25-hour flights to far-off lands of beauty and mystery, and I'm surprised to say that they held up much better than anticipated. I must admit though that I quite babied them in their included carrying pouch, but under certain lighting conditions you can definitely tell that they were used. So in conclusion, it's a very good looking, very capable power bank with some nifty quality of life features. If you're in the market for a more premium power bank, or know somebody who would enjoy one under a certain holiday tree, these are a good recommendation. Next up is the Precision Screwdriver Kit Pro from HOTO. Now, this is another item that I initially dismissed. After getting the iFixit toolkit, I couldn't care less about any electronic screwdrivers, but when they offered me to try out their original Precision kit, I thought, why not? And since then, I've become a big fan. Granted, I do open a lot of gadgets in my videos, but even if you don't, a toolkit like this can come in quite handy for all kinds of repairs. The Pro Kit also addresses one of the only annoyances I had with the original Precision kit, and that's how you charge it. Instead of having to take the driver out of the case and have it potentially roll around on your desk, you can now charge it through the enclosure. There's no built-in battery if you're wondering, it's just passing the juice through to the driver. The driver design also changed a little bit. The grips are now contained to just the front, which I'm not so keen on. I actually like the old ones a little better. The Pro version also contains a switch to change between a lighter and stronger torque mode, so you don't accidentally strip out any screws, and the front also contains a handy LED lights, just in case you need a little bit more visibility. Of course, the bigger box isn't just larger to accommodate the charging mechanism. You get one extra bit, while 6 of them are also longer to get in there deep. Now, next to them, you get a dedicated spot to magnetize and demagnetize the bits. I don't know why you have to do that here, maybe it's because they are held in magnetically, I don't know. But if the bit needs a charge, you can take it and just put it in the plus compartment or in the -1 to discharge it. Everything from here on out is exclusive to the Pro kit, starting with these handy guitar picks. Well, they're actually not guitar picks, although you can use them to do that too, but these are perfect to get to all kinds of plastic housings. Next to them we have 3 miniature plastic crowbars, which Mr. Freeman would certainly approve of. Solid and handy if you need a little bit more force. They're also great for scraping off stickers. At the top we've got 2 more plastic tools. Not quite sure what I would use the first one for, but it looks like the murder weapon of a summer horror movie. Then we have a spudger, which I have used many times to penetrate small perforations or disconnect those pesky ribbon cables. Then we got a metal one, which I actually don't know what to do with, but I'm sure it'll come in handy at some point, a bigger pry tool with a bit more grip, and 2 small pliers, one with a rounded tip and one which is so sharp that I've actually damaged myself more often than I'd like to admit. Lastly, we have a suction cup that is designed to help you remove screens. If I ever get to upgrade or change my Steam Deck screen, this will surely come in handy. Finally, we have a magnetized mat that is perfect to keep those pesky little bits from running away while you're working. All of this is stored in a really nice and compact package that is perfect for any keyboard enthusiast, builder, or even if you just like to tinker around with your devices. Even if you just change the M.2 drive on your Steam Deck, it can make that procedure just a little more fun. The Nitro deck from CRKD is something that has been buzzing around the Switch community quite a bit as of late. I ended up getting one simply because it looked so cool, and seeing it in person, I can confirm that this thing is pretty sweet. It's hard to come up with a better description other than Steam Deck Mini because it resembles it so much. Yes, it is smaller and the buttons, all of them including the sticks, feel quite different from Valve's counterpart, but they are significantly better than those found on the Joy-Cons, at least when it comes to ergonomic feel and feedback. I haven't made my mind up about the D-pad yet. My first impressions are very solid, but the games I play don't utilize it as much, so I can't say for sure yet if I like it in the long run. The sticks on the other hand feel great. They are much taller and easier to use. Almost too easy, as I found the resistance to be a bit too loose for my taste, but still miles better than the original ones. They also use Hall effect magnets to determine your input, which should eradicate stick drift. I haven't used something like this in recent times, that is if you exclude the crank from the playdate, so I can't comment on the longevity, but everyone seems to be on board that these are better. Well, everyone except Valve. The overall ergonomics are great too, it just really feels like the perfect handheld form factor, just the right amount of grip for its display size, but there are 4 things that I don't like. First off is the right analog stick, which seems to be a bit too close to the buttons. There are moments when I accidentally trigger it without wanting to, and the palm of my wrist also frequently touches it. It hasn't created any dramatic issues, but I wish it was a little off to the left. Depending on your hands though, you might not have any issues at all. Then there are the USB-C ports. There are 2, one for charging and one to pass through to the dock or other accessories. I wish they would have placed it on the top like the Steam Deck, because the way it works now feels a bit finicky. I also can see the tension of the port, and I have this paranoia that one day, without knowing what is plugged in, I ripped the entire back portion off because I didn't see it. But it will allow you to charge the Switch while being popped up, which is something you cannot do with the original. Despite making the Switch an arguably better looking device, in my opinion the front or the chin of the Nitro deck is downright ugly. It's very blocky and thick. I don't think anyone is going to care about this, but I feel it does take away a lot from the Switch's elegance. Lastly, I don't like the bumpers. They feel a little mushy. This might sound counterintuitive, but it also makes the Switch quite a bit larger. Yes, larger means more ergonomic, that's the whole point of it, but it is something to keep in mind. It will more than double the Switch's thickness, so it won't fit into most existing Switch bags. Of course, the Nitro deck also contains a kickstand. Not as great as the one found on the Switch OLED, but definitely a lot better than the flimsy one on the D-brand grip case for the Steam Deck, and it can also be adjusted all the way to the bottom. You also have 4 programmable buttons on the back, which can easily be mapped to any of the main buttons, even directions, as well as key combos and turboing. I won't detail how you do that because CRKD has a really great video explaining all of this, which I've linked down in the description below. In my opinion, the Nitro deck creates the perfect form factor for a more permanent handheld experience. I say permanent because the way it is designed, the Switch is not supposed to be removed constantly like with the Joy-Cons. It's not hard to do so, but the Nitro deck won't function on its own. There is no battery, no wireless connection, it's just a controller that is connected to the USB-C port of the Switch, which can, by the way, also be used as a wired controller on its own. I really like this thing, and at $60 for the base version, I think it is, for once, not an overpriced kit. There are more expensive versions that come with a case and extra thumbsticks, which, by the way, can easily be replaced too, but I feel like the extra $30 is a bit much for a limited color run, even if it includes a case. Finally, we have the Audeze Maxwell, a premium gaming headset that was released just at the beginning of this year and has made quite a splash for not only being a great gaming headset, but also a great headset in general. Now, if you've been with the channel for a while, you know that I've just reviewed the III TMA2 Wireless Plus studio headphones, and yes, I've actually sold those and replaced them with these. There was one issue I had with the TMA2s that kept popping up, and it was one entirely caused by my own stupidity. I kept forgetting to charge them. Granted, I also forgot to turn them off, and the fact that they don't have a standby mode made things worse, as the battery easily drained in just a couple of hours. The Maxwells didn't pop up immediately on my radar, but out of sheer luck or fate maybe, someone was selling this very kit on a local second-hand site for only $250. Just for context, these go for around $299, and I also got a pair of Wicked cushions. More on those in a second. Now, I'm no audiophile, but I do enjoy listening to music as well as playing games, and these just seem to be a perfect fit for my use case. They are a bit friendlier to use and contain a configurable standby mode while having an enormously long battery life of 80 hours. So even if I forgot to charge them or turn them off, they'll be safe in the morning, and even if the worst case kicks in, they support fast charging, which will give you about 20 hours of juice, which is 20 minutes of charging. One of the primary selling points of these is their use of planar magnetic drivers. I'm just going to read the specifications here as I don't understand enough about audio technology to assess this, but it essentially is an alternate way of how sound is produced compared to your regular dynamic drivers, which are found in almost any other headphones. The supposed strength of these is a more accurate, fine granular reproduction of sound. All I can say is that the music is enormously crisp and the default EQ sounds very pleasant to my ears, and even if you don't like that, there are a few presets to switch between, or you can dial it in by their mobile app, but not on the desktop for some strange reason. They also ship with a proprietary dongle that gives you a low latency connection, which I can confirm works great for video editing and playing music as well. However, these go into a low power state fairly quickly, and as soon as an audio signal is detected again, they will come back. Meaning, if you've got no audio for just a couple of seconds, they will go to sleep, and as soon as sound is detected again, it'll fade back in, which I was worried that it would get really annoying really fast during the edit of a video, where I pause and play quite frequently. Luckily, this never happened. My editing pauses never seemed to be long enough to trigger the sleep, and even when it did, it was a lot less noticeable than I expected. The microphone sounds pretty awful, as you can hear. It's definitely not going to win any awards, but it does have a great background noise reduction, which you can adjust with a dedicated button. You can also adjust the volume on the headset itself. This is actually your system volume, as it is not independent, and you also have a second dial to adjust pass-through. This will set how much you hear from your own voice, but I found it to be rather disappointing. I generally prefer to have my voice pass through just a little bit, but instead of just doing that, the Maxwells will pass through the surrounding sound just as much. Worst of all, the audio quality seems to be affected by this. It reminds me a lot of the transparency mode found on Apple's AirPods Pro. Not something I need here, so I turn it off permanently. Another fear I had was the weight, as these come in at around 490 grams, but so far I've managed to wear them all day without having any issues at all. It took a bit getting used to at the beginning, but I quickly became accustomed to them. What I couldn't get used to were the Wicked cushions. These can be bought separately for many headphones, including the Maxwells. They offer a larger, cushier feel while also containing gel pads to keep your head cool during those heated gaming sessions. I was excited to try these out as I've heard much about them, but unfortunately the thicker cups started to hurt my head after just a short while due to the increased pressure. It doesn't look like much, but it was enough to make them practically unusable for me. But I'm pretty happy with the stock cups anyway, and so far I haven't had any overheating issues. To wrap this up, the Maxwell come in two variants, the PlayStation version and the Xbox one, which is $30 more and includes a Dolby Atmos license. Here's where things get a little interesting depending on your use case. Just because you're buying the PlayStation version doesn't mean that you won't be able to use Dolby Atmos, on PC that is. It'll work on the PS5 as advertised and also supports Sony's Tempest 3D audio. By flicking the switch on the dongle to PC, they will work just fine on there too, but initially, or if you don't have a Dolby Atmos license already, you will need to purchase one in the Microsoft Store for around $15 to enable that. This isn't something that's specific to the Maxwell, so you can buy that license for any pair of headphones. The difference with the Xbox version is that the license is included with the headset, meaning it will work with Dolby Atmos sources out of the box. Now, the other difference is very unfortunate, that is that the PlayStation variant will not work on the Xbox Series X at all, and vice versa. Both work just fine on PC though, so if you mostly play PC and PlayStation like myself, the PS version is a much better buy and you won't lose any PC features. You just have to buy that license if you want it, so think about that for a second before you pull the trigger on these. This is a bit of a pricey gift, I'll admit, but don't forget, you're a person too, and just like everyone else, you deserve some nice things every now and then as well. And that's about it. These are the gadgets I got this year that didn't make it into a dedicated video, but where I still felt that they deserve some time in the limelight. Full disclosure, the Divoom HOTO set and SHARGE power bank were sent to me at some point this year, but none of those companies had any input, they didn't see anything in advance, and they didn't pay anything to be included in this video. But disclaimers aside, what were some of the more interesting gadgets that you got this year? I'd like to know, because every time I make a video about a particular gadget or keyboard, one of you gives me some hints about an alternative version that I never even heard about. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope this little change of format wasn't too awful. We'll be back to our regular programming in just a bit. Until then, thank you again for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.